Welcome and thank you for joining today's conference. Welcome to the ISO webinar. Before we begin, please ensure you've opened the chat panel by using the associated icon located at the bottom of your screen. If you require technical assistance, please send a chat to the event producer. All audio lines have been muted until the Q&A portion of the call. We'll give you instructions on how to ask a question at that time. As a reminder, this conference is being recorded. And with that, I'd like to turn the call over to Radha Madrigal, the lead client trainer. Radha, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ethan. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the California ISO. Today's quarterly webinar is scheduled for 2 hours and is intended to provide an introduction to an audience that comes from a broad spectrum, from energy sector newcomers to public officials and regulators to ISO veterans who may already be familiar with various ISO functions. My name is Radha Madrigal, lead client trainer in the Customer Readiness Department, and I will be facilitating today's discussion. On behalf of the ISO, thank you for joining us today. Let's take a look at the primary topics we will touch on today. These topics are intended to be high level to give you a general understanding of the ISO and its functions, and you will be pointed to where you may find more information that is impactful for you. This webinar is being recorded, so if you would like to hear it again or if you think it would be helpful to others at your organization, it will be posted on our Learning Center webpage in approximately 3 to 5 business days, along with a copy of the slides. The final slides will also contain some helpful links that relate to the material that we cover today. Along with this recorded webinar and slides are many other informational resources, including computer-based training courses and other initiative-related recorded webinars, and I'll show you how to find our Learning Center later in this presentation. There will be breaks during the discussion when the operator will open the phone lines for verbal questions, and ample time has been set aside for your questions. If you have questions throughout the presentation that you want to have addressed, you can also type your question in the chat at any time, and the moderator will read it on your behalf during the Q&A section. If we can't answer your question right away, we'll research the topic and email a response to all of the participants. So if you have provided your email address by logging into the webinar today, then you will receive a copy of those answers to those questions. Approximately 2/3 of the United States and more than half of Canada is broken up into 9 energy regions. Independent system operators, ISOs, or regional transmission operators, RTOs, are the federally regulated regional organizations that perform the same functions of coordinating, controlling, and monitoring the operation of the electrical power system, as well as acting as a marketplace for wholesale power for these regions. Similar to a stock exchange, an ISO never actually owns or takes title to the energy that is purchased and sold, and only acts as the mechanism to bring buyers and sellers of energy and energy services together. The California ISO is one of these entities and resides in the regional area known as the Western Interconnection. Though the ISOs and RTOs have different ways of operating their grids and markets, we all participate together in the ISO-RTO Council that is committed to work together to build a smarter and more efficient grid that is prepared to meet North American market and consumer needs. During this course, we will be focusing on the California ISO and its processes, but it is important to note that if you are doing business with other ISOs, being aware of the differences in how they all operate and the terminology used will be a great benefit in allowing your interaction to be more successful. Like many other ISOs, the California ISO is a nonprofit public benefit corporation. We are responsible for the constant and reliable flow of electricity for the health, safety, and welfare of consumers. But unlike a public utility, we are profit neutral, independent, and we do not serve end-use customers. We operate the transmission system, but not distribution lines. those are operated and maintained by the utilities, who also perform maintenance on generators and transmission systems. Unlike the utilities, we do not own any transmission or generation assets, and we do not take ownership of the energy on the system. We do, however, coordinate the maintenance of these grid facilities to ensure sufficient resources are available to meet the needs of consumers. The ISO facilitates a fair and transparent wholesale electricity market, and we accomplish that through our policies, planning, and initiatives. We provide state-of-the-art technology that allows for enhanced situational awareness of the state of the bulk electric system to help grid operators maintain reliability and keep the lights on. We have a comprehensive transmission planning process to accommodate the need for system expansion, as well as clear the way for clean, green resources to access the grid. We actively engage with state and federal entities to support policy and regional goals for integration of more distributed and clean power products and improved coordination over larger geographical areas to enhance reliability and lower costs. The ISO is located in the Western Interconnection, which is represented here. In addition to being an ISO, we are also registered as a balancing authority. While all ISOs are BAs, not all BAs are ISOs. A BAA, or a balancing authority area, is a combination or set of intertie points and resources, and the balancing authority is responsible for matching generation and load while maintaining the electric frequency of the grid. There are 39 separate BAs in the West, each with the same core functions of preparing the system for next day operations using resources within their boundaries, as well as taking into account imported energy from neighboring BAs and matching changing supply with changing demand in real time. The ISO is the largest BA in this region, handling an estimated 36% of the electric load in the Western Interconnection. Utilities, such as investor-owned utilities or public utilities, sit inside of the boundaries of a BAA, and their energy may be shared throughout the entire interconnection, enhancing reliability through greater resource pools, as well as helping achieve renewable generation targets and maintaining costs. As this energy is shared between BAAs, continual communication and accurate tracking between the BAs is critical to maintaining situational awareness of grid efficiency. Electronic tagging, or e-tagging, tracks the energy that is scheduled to flow between BAAs. E-tags contain data that allows us to model where energy is being produced and consumed and what transmission lines are being utilized for reliability and settlements purposes. As a grid operator, the ISO makes sure the lights stay on in our balancing authority area. Every BA uses a different means to accomplish this. As a market operator, the ISO supports reliability by running markets for energy and capacity. We use these markets to balance supply and demand across a large operational footprint and ensure that we are operating the transmission system within appropriate limits. The market provides price transparency that is reflective of system conditions. We facilitate non-discriminatory grid access to supply and demand, and we have mechanisms to ensure that the grid is secure in the case of a contingency event. If a system outage were to occur, there is a coordinated process to restore the system to a normal state. Additionally, the ISO also handles coordination among BAs in its role as a reliability coordinator known as RC West. On November 1st, 2019, the ISO became the official reliability coordinator of record for 41 electricity balancing authorities and transmission operators across 14 western states and northern Mexico. RC West now has oversight of power grid reliability for balancing authorities and transmission operators in the Western Interconnection, monitoring compliance for 87% of the load in the Western U.S. A reliability coordinator has the highest level of authority and responsibility for the reliable operation of power grids and has wide visibility of bulk electric systems. RC West monitors the interconnected power grids in the West for compliance with federal and regional standards, determines measures to prevent or mitigate system emergencies in day-ahead or real-time operation, and leads system restoration following major incidents. The series of milestones the ISO completed to launch this service are listed at the bottom of this slide. As an ISO and BA, we must adhere to strict oversight from key agencies, which include FERC, NERC, and WEC. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, is the independent U.S. federal entity that is the regulator of our market and, as such, has jurisdiction over interstate electricity sales, wholesale electric rates, natural gas and oil pipeline rates, reliability standards for the bulk power systems, and so forth. FERC reviews the ISO's market rules and transmission rates to ensure they are just and reasonable and do not create undue preferences or discrimination under the Federal Power Act. The North American Electric Reliability Corporation, or NERC, is the international regulatory authority whose mission is to assure the reliability and security of the bulk power system in North America. NERC works with all stakeholders to develop and enforce standards for power system operation, physical and cybersecurity, and system operator preparedness, and then enforces compliance with those standards. They also work with the North American Energy Standards Board, or NASB, to develop standards, including e-tagging standards. The Western Electricity Coordinating Council, or WEC, is a nonprofit corporation responsible for coordinating and promoting bulk electric system reliability in the geographic area known as the Western Interconnection, which we displayed on an earlier slide. Here you see a chart of how the ISO is structured, which includes the various teams that you would most likely interact with. Using our Board of Governors as a starting point, you can see the relationship between departments, committees, and regional entities. Our board is comprised of 5 members that each serve a staggered 3-year term and are appointed by the Governor of California. Our Department of Market Monitoring reports directly to our board and is responsible for ensuring that the market remains competitive by analyzing market trends and market initiatives, identifying potential anti-competitive market behavior or market inefficiencies, and enforcing FERC decisions. In order to provide transparency, the Department of Market Monitoring produces regular reports that are available on our website. The main task of the Audit Committee is oversight of the ISO's budget and financial operations, while the Market Surveillance Committee provides the board with independent oversight of the markets. The EIM governing body is ancillary to the Board of Governors and exercises delegated authority from the Board of Governors over Western energy imbalance market rules. There is also a body of state regulators that includes representation from 8 states, responsible for advising the EIM governing body and ISO board on matters of interest. There is also a regional issues forum that is the public vehicle for stakeholders to discuss EIM-related issues, including impacts to neighboring balancing authority areas. Our president and CEO is Elliot Mainzer. The Transmission Planning and Infrastructure Development Team works on the development of grid and infrastructure. Market Policy and Performance works on market design, looks at market performance and integrating renewables into the market, and interacts with California regulatory agencies. The Technology or IT division manages the market and system applications as well as all corporate applications. They also maintain the highest standard of cybersecurity, critical to ensure the safety of grid and market operating systems as well as our customers. Our Operations division maintains reliability, runs the market, and manages the process from bid to settlement. The General Counsel division maintains reliability, the General Counsel division is our legal group that works on the ISO tariff and is the group that interacts with FERC, NERC, WEC, and other agencies when it comes to filings, compliance, and regulations. The External and Customer Affairs team interacts with customers both within the ISO footprint and at the regional level as well. These interactions cover everyday questions as well as forward-looking policies such as improvements to the ISO markets, EIM, and regional integration. Those of us, like myself, on the Customer Readiness team are part of the External and Customer Affairs organization. With all of the functions of the ISO, it is imperative that these boards, committees, and departments work effectively together to serve the needs of our customers and stakeholders. Though we are not a state agency, we work with these agencies to implement state policy, perform studies, facilitate a fair and transparent wholesale electricity market, and drive innovation. The Air Resource Board's mission is to promote and protect public health, welfare, and ecological resources through the effective and efficient reduction of air pollutants, while recognizing and considering the effects on the state's economy. One of their main focuses is limiting greenhouse gas emissions through programs that utilize renewable energy credits, or RECs. Generators can purchase these RECs in order to offset their air emissions and continue to operate their facilities. The California Energy Commission, or CEC, is responsible for the certification of electrical generation facilities as eligible renewable energy resources and adopting regulations for the enforcement of Renewable Portfolio Standard, or RPS, procurement requirements of public-owned utilities. The RPS is currently set at 60% of total energy procurement from eligible renewable energy sources by 2030, and the ISO is active in working to help achieve this goal. We also work with the California Senate and Assembly to effect change in the energy industry. The Water Resources Control Board is focusing on once-through cooling issues. We have a number of generators in California that are close to the coast and use seawater to aid in the conversion process of condensing steam back into water, which can have a detrimental effect on marine habitats. The Water Resources Control Board is coordinating a long-term effort with resources to find alternative ways to cool their plants or to possibly retire them. The ISO works with the Public Utilities Commission on resource adequacy and generation procurement. The CPUC implements and administers RPS compliance rules for California's retail sellers of electricity, which include large and small investor-owned utilities, electric service providers, and community choice aggregators. The CPUC adopted a resource adequacy, or RA, policy framework in 2004 in order to ensure the reliability of electric service in California. The CPUC established RA obligations applicable to all load-serving entities within the CPUC's jurisdiction. The Commission's RA program guides resource procurement and promotes infrastructure investment by requiring that load-serving entities procure capacity so that that capacity is available to the ISO when and where needed. The Integrated Resource Plan is an umbrella planning proceeding to consider all of the Commission's electric procurement policies and programs and ensure California has a safe, reliable, and cost-effective electricity supply. As I mentioned before, though we are not a state agency, we still want to help shape policies as they affect our customers and grid operations. So it is of great benefit for us to work closely with these entities inside of California as well as with agencies outside of California. But we don't just work with regulatory agencies, oversight boards, and state agencies. Partnership with our stakeholders is critical to the success of the ISO. Stakeholder input is essential to ISO planning processes and for the success of new initiatives, from policy development to implementation. We encourage you to participate in our stakeholder engagement opportunities. On our website, under the Stay Informed tab, you will find information on our stakeholder initiatives. This page lists all of the initiatives we're working on at the ISO and provides all of the papers and meeting schedules for those initiatives should you be interested in participating in the discussion. We are committed to providing ample chances for stakeholder input into our market design, implementation, and infrastructure planning activities. The stakeholder process will shape the market design and policies through a series of proposals, meetings, and comment periods, including any changes to our tariff. A great deal of the documentation that we adhere to from a reliability and safety standpoint is defined by federal and regulatory standards. Our primary document is our tariff, which outlines the rates, terms, and conditions under which the ISO operates. The tariff is modified in collaboration with our stakeholders through our stakeholder process. Pertinent FERC rules are codified in our tariff, so any wholesale exchange of electricity in our markets comes under their purview. To view our tariff and associated filings in a more user-friendly way, you can visit our eTariff viewer that offers convenient access to all ISO-related files that are part of FERC's eTariff system. We also have business practice manuals, or BPMs. The rules in the tariff can be high level at times, so our BPMs provide detailed rules, procedures, and examples for the administration, operation, planning, and accounting requirements of the California ISO and the market that are consistent with the ISO tariff. Adhering to the manuals is important for orderly operation of the ISO market. And then finally, the last section of this slide points out that our operating procedures provide critical step-by-step actions of our control room tasks. Some of these procedures are posted on our website, while others are confidential. The ISO is registered with NERC as a balancing authority, a transmission operator, a transmission service provider, planning coordinator, market operator, and reliability coordinator. Together, these roles are grouped into three main categories: reliability, infrastructure planning, and market operations. We're going to take a look at each one of these in a little bit more depth. As our industry moves into the future, we face challenges and competing priorities. Reliability is the foremost grid consideration, but it is not the only consideration. As more renewables and green power products are added into the power mix, as we expand our horizons, we face challenges related to under or oversupply and the need for more flexibility. When there is more electricity being generated than places to store or export it, or when there is too little supply, it could affect the reliability of the grid. The bottom line is that there are a lot of things we want to do, but there are cost, time, and impact considerations. Therefore, it is critical that we coordinate with several entities to plan the transmission needs of the ISO Balancing Authority area. Transmission planning at the ISO is an open and transparent process that actively engages stakeholder and public input and uses the best engineering analysis possible to determine short and long-term infrastructure needs of the ISO transmission grid, which is comprised of over 26,000 circuit miles, to maintain reliability and bring economic benefits to consumers. The ISO works closely with the CPUC and the CEC throughout the transmission planning process to identify and study reliability, policy-driven, and economically driven needs. Our transmission planning process begins annually and lasts 15 months. This process has two phases for project definition and evaluation, and a possible third for competitive solicitation for selected projects. In Phase 1, we are developing forward-looking assumptions. In Phase 2, we are performing analyses and identifying transmission needs. If approved by the ISO board, in Phase 3, we select proposals to build needed transmission projects. Just as we have a transmission planning process, we also have a robust generator interconnection process to help resources interconnect to the ISO grid. Our streamlined process helps resource owners understand the steps to interconnecting their resource to the ISO grid by providing requirement compliance information, as well as an assigned interconnection specialist to walk the entity through the entire process from the beginning through commercial operations. Now we're going to take a high-level look at these processes. At a high level, the generator interconnection process starts when a resource submits a request to interconnect. This kicks off the generator interconnection study to determine reliability impacts to the system and identify any upgrades that need to be made. This study process takes just over 2 years to complete. After the studies and approval to move forward, interconnection agreements are signed, and then the new resource implementation process begins. Once this process is complete, the resource can begin participating in the market. The tariff allows 7 years for a project to reach its commercial operation date after the interconnection request is submitted. An important item to note is how critical it is to pay attention to deadline dates. It is important to keep all projects moving forward, as many processes are linked and feed one another. One of the main tasks of the queue management specialist is to make sure the projects in the queue or process are moving along and interconnection customers are meeting their dates to ensure that generation resources can be interconnected in an efficient manner. An ISO typically has a competitive energy market, which most BAs do not have. As a registered market operator, we act as a marketplace for wholesale power, or basically a clearinghouse under the exclusive jurisdiction of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. The ISO wholesale energy market is comprised of distinct day-ahead and real-time processes. The energy products and services traded in our market allows us to meet reliability needs and serve load. The day-ahead energy market enables parties with bilateral agreements to schedule their contracted supply and demand into the market, to offload excess supply in the form of energy or ancillary services products, and secure pricing due to changes in load forecasts or for incremental changes in demand. Most demand is met in advance of the market through utility-owned or bilaterally procured resources. The ISO's real-time energy market has the hour-ahead scheduling process, which enables import and export resources to schedule their megawatts hourly, as well as a 15-minute market, or FMM, that allows variable energy resources such as wind or solar to submit energy forecasts and economic bids closer to the financially binding interval, which increases bid accuracy. The 5-minute market is intended to meet the instantaneous demand that shows up in real time. The purpose of the day-ahead market is to assure that there are adequate resources available and deliverable in real time. Energy is the actual electricity needed to meet the demand of consumers. In general, much of the energy used within California is procured through bilateral contracts outside of the ISO market, in which supply is purchased under contract to meet demand. The energy needs to be scheduled into the ISO markets so that the ISO can use the information to monitor the physical energy flows on the system. The day-ahead market enables suppliers to submit into the markets energy not under contract and enables buyers to procure additional supply in the event that they do not have enough under contract to meet their demand. We use demand forecasts, which allows us to know how much energy will be needed in real time to meet load requirements. And the ISO must project how much energy will be needed and how much will be available for the next day, the next week, the next month, next year, and so forth, and we do that through robust forecasting practices. The more accurate data we have, the more accurate the demand forecast. Therefore, the ISO is consistently working on improving load, wind, and solar forecasts in day-ahead, hour-ahead, and real-time timeframes to keep the lights on and the costs lower for consumers. Now we'll take a brief overview of the market timelines. We have just talked about both the day-ahead and real-time markets, and this diagram shows the relationship between the two markets. As you can see, they are very similar. The day-ahead market opens 7 days before the trade date and closes at 10 a.m. the day before. The day-ahead market is made up of 3 market processes that run sequentially. First, the ISO runs a market power mitigation test. Bids that fail the test are revised to predetermined limits. These market power mitigation measures are intended to provide the means for the ISO to mitigate the market effects of any conduct that would substantially distort competitive outcomes in the ISO markets while avoiding unnecessary interference with competitive price signals. The second process is the integrated forward market, which enables the generation needs to meet bid and demand, or excuse me, which establishes the generation needed to meet bid and demand. Market prices set are based on bids. And lastly, the RUC, or the Residual Unit Commitment process, secures capacity from additional resources in order to meet the forecasted demand for the next day. These processes are co-optimized to produce a day-ahead schedule at least cost while meeting local reliability needs. And the final step of the day-ahead market is to publish the market results at approximately 1300. When the day-ahead market is published, this triggers the opening of the real-time market. Bids are once again submitted along with base schedules from our EIM participants. Market processes run, bids clear the market, and dispatch orders are sent and received. The market is then settled in our post-market processes. And now we're going to go ahead and break this down a little further for you. This graph here represents 1 hour in the day-ahead market. Scheduling coordinators can submit different bid curves for each hour of the day. All of the economic bids and self-schedules, both supply and demand, are placed on a curve. After we discuss the market processes, I'll take a little detour and talk about different types of bids. On the left, we have the bid prices, and along the bottom, we have the megawatts. This is a very simplified diagram, but the green supply curve represents the supply bids lined up from the least expensive to the most expensive. The blue line has all of the demand bids, showing what demand is willing to pay. This curve is lined up from the most expensive to the least expensive. Where these two lines cross, that represents the amount of supply and demand megawatts that will clear in the day-ahead market. When I say clear the market, what I mean by this is if a resource submits a successful bid and will therefore be contributing its generation to meet demand, it is said to clear the market. The cheapest resource will clear the market first, followed by the next cheapest option, and so forth until demand is met. When supply matches demand, the market is cleared, and the price of the last resource to offer in, plus other market operation charges, becomes the wholesale price of power for that particular hour. This is the first step in our plan for the next day. Now, energy is needed to meet the demand and keep the lights on, but we also need capacity available to back up the instantaneous energy need. Slide 25, we're looking at our ancillary services products. So these support the reliable operation of the transmission system as we move electricity from generating sources to retail customers. These items here listed on the slide are the 4 ancillary services products that are procured in real time. Regulation corrects for short-term changes in electricity use that might affect the stability of the power system. These generators are under ISO control through Automatic Generation Control, or AGC, which allows us to move these resources every 4 seconds. The notes say these are procured in real time, but they're also procured in the day ahead as well. Operating reserves, the last section there, are capacity products designed to ensure reliability in the event of a grid disturbance. For example, a large generator goes offline unexpectedly. Spinning reserves are synchronized to the grid and available to be dispatched as energy within a 10-minute period. The concept of spinning originally referred to increasing the torque applied to a turbine's rotor, but today other types of resources can meet this need, for example, storage. So if you think of spinning and non-spinning reserves, those are more legacy terms, but we still use those to define the types of products. Non-spinning reserves are not synchronized to the grid, but they can be synchronized and be available for dispatch within 10 minutes, such as a fast start generator, for example. The ISO procures regulating reserves based on procurement targets set by the ISO to meet WEC standards. Contingency reserves are procured based on targets set by WEC. And we have a residual unit commitment process to meet ISO's system-wide and regional forecasts. Now, what happens if the amount of energy that clears the market is less than the ISO predicts it will need? We're going to take a look at the residual unit commitment process that is designed to account for that. The market also analyzes bids for residual unit commitment to cover this gap. So what we see here is the total cleared demand from the day ahead compared to the ISO forecast of actual demand. And what we see is this residual unit commitment process that is designed to fill this gap. In many cases, this need is fulfilled by supply that is already dedicated due to a resource adequacy program that is part of California's mandate, but other suppliers can also offer to provide this product. The residual unit commitment process is a method of ensuring the reliability of the grid. RUC is used to bridge the gap between what cleared for each hour in day ahead compared to what the demand forecast is for that hour. If a resource is awarded for RUC capacity, they will need to submit an energy bid in real time. There may be a payment for the capacity in day ahead, and if we need the energy in real time, there will be an additional payment at the real-time price. One more thing we need to discuss is market power mitigation. When there are multiple resources available to serve load in an area, prices are competitive. But if there's only one resource available to serve the load, they can command the price. This is known as market power. For every hour, the day-ahead market runs a test to see if any resource has the potential for market power. If the potential for market power is determined, the resource's bid will be mitigated or lowered to a more reasonable price if required. Resource bids that are mitigated are reduced to a cost-based bid. Grid operators need an operating plan for the next day in order to ensure reliability. The ISO uses its day-ahead market to create that plan. As a result, resources are committed to provide supply to meet the demand that cleared in the market, supply to meet the ISO demand forecast, and ancillary services to meet the reliability requirements that we have in place. I mentioned that we were going to take a closer look at how the bids were formed after we talked about the market processes. So that is this little section here, and then we'll give you an opportunity to ask questions in about maybe 5 slides or so. An energy bid provides the market with an economic signal that indicates a participant's willingness to supply or to purchase energy, depending on what side of the coin they're on. All of the day-ahead bids are submitted by scheduling coordinators. When a scheduling coordinator submits a bid for supply resource, they provide us with the quantity of megawatts they are willing to offer at various price points. As the price increases, the quantity offered increases as well. So I'll give you 10 megawatts if the price is $20, but I'll give you 50 megawatts if the price is $100, as an example. These prices are meant to reflect their cost of providing supply. The market has a bid cap of $1,000 and a bid floor of negative $150, so the bids submitted into the market must be within this range. The scheduling coordinator for demand also submits bids letting the market know how much they are willing to pay to buy megawatts. The lower the price, the more they are willing to buy. We also have a concept called self-schedules. A participant can submit a self-schedule, which is considered to be a price taker. These are offers to either supply or buy, no matter the price. For example, a supplier could submit a self-schedule for 100 megawatts of energy. This tells the market that they are planning on generating 100 megawatts tomorrow, regardless of the price. Perhaps they have a contract with a load-serving entity to provide these megawatts. On the other side of the coin, a load-serving entity could submit a self-schedule for 100 megawatts of demand in the day-ahead market. This is a signal to the market that they will buy supply no matter what price the market clears. They might do this to ensure that they secure supply to serve their demand in advance of the real-time market. Maybe they feel the price might be higher in real time. All of the scheduling coordinators have submitted their bids into the day-ahead market on the day before the operating day, and so here is how we stack them up. The self-schedules are at the beginning of the curve because they are indifferent to the prices, so they will clear the market. As I mentioned before, the place where supply and demand curves cross, that is indicating the amount, that is indicating the total cleared demand in the day-ahead market. In day-ahead, we clear supply bids against demand bids. So bid in supply is cleared against bid in demand in day ahead. In real time, we clear supply against the ISO load forecast. So in real time, any additional demand that shows up will be served by the real-time market at the real-time price. So if you look at the demand that is to the right side of the total cleared demand there in the chart in the middle, these quantities will clear in real time. Now there's more to this story than what's illustrated on this slide here. What if we have a lot of resources that bid at exactly the same price? How does the market know which resource to commit? Here's an example where 5 different resource bids into the day-ahead market, and they're all bidding it at $20. So what differentiates them? The bids that suppliers submit have more than just a bid price for their energy. They also supply additional information, such as the cost for starting up the unit and running it at minimum output. Even though all of these resources have a bid at $20, it may cost more to start up a gas-fired generator than a wind resource. So the market will award the wind resource in lieu of the gas-fired generator. And additionally, the market looks at whether it's cheaper to start up a resource or to use one that's already running. So is it cheaper to keep a resource on at its minimum output or to start up another one? I see a question in the chat that had a question about the previous slide, so I'll show this again to you real fast. They wanted to know if the bid curves that we showed here indicate or include convergence bids or bids from virtual participants, and the answer to that is yes. One of the processes in day ahead when we are clearing bid in supply against bid in demand, that is called the integrated forward market, and that includes convergence or virtual bids. Those bids are not included when we are clearing for RUC, which looks at what actually cleared in day ahead compared to the demand forecast. So convergence or virtual bids are in the market for one of the processes, and then not in the market when and then not considered when we're looking at the residual unit commitment to show what physically cleared compared to the forecast. So then there was this slide, which we talked about. So the 3-part energy bid has startup time, minimum load cost, and the energy bid curve above that minimum load. So far we've talked about the need for a day-ahead market and information about the bids that are used. The market optimization needs other information, not just the bids, to complete the plan for the day-ahead time frame, and so now we'll take a look at that. In addition to the bids that we discussed, we have the network model, which is like a map of the transmission lines. It includes load and generation, and it's like a road map of the system. This provides the market with all of the options for flowing the supply to meet the demand. Transmission limits let the market know how many megawatts of supply can flow on each transmission line. We also need to know the attributes of all of the resources that are submitting economic bids in the market. We have a database with all of the participating resources that provides information such as how long it will take for a resource to start up, the ramp rate of that resource, how many times per day it can be started up, how long you have to wait between startups, the maximum number of megawatts it can produce, the type of fuel it uses, and so on. This informs the market of how the resource can be used. Forecasts are used to predict the needs for the next day. These forecasts include demand forecasts as well as weather forecasts, providing insight into the energy requirements and also the potential quantity of renewables that might be available. If it will be a windy day, then wind turbines may be available, for example. Transmission outages and resource outages will impact the amount of megawatts that can flow. So the market uses this information in determining which resources can be awarded. And now we'll take a look at the real-time timeline. There are three main timelines in the real-time market. Bids from all market participants and base schedules from the energy imbalance market are submitted 75 minutes before each trade hour. These bids are used in the hourly processes for intertie transactions, the 15-minute market, and the real-time dispatch, which occurs every 5 minutes. The real-time market fine-tunes the flow of electricity to follow fluctuations in supply and demand. As we move into the real-time market, at least 5 hours ahead, we look at our updated forecast and begin committing resources as necessary. From the time the day-ahead market schedules are posted to 75 minutes before the trade hour, bids can be submitted for the real-time market. So the day-ahead market results publish, that triggers the opening of the real-time market, and then for each of those individual trade hours, up to 75 minutes before that trade hour is the deadline for bids for that particular hour. We have something called an hour-ahead scheduling process, which is a process for scheduling energy and ancillary services based on the bids submitted by imports. We also have something called a real-time unit commitment process, where the ISO makes final decisions on resource commitments to adjust the day-ahead schedule. Energy is paid at either the day-ahead or the real-time price based on when the resource receives its market award. There are a number of inputs into the real-time market that includes data from the day-ahead, resource parameters, real-time system information, energy bids, outages, and transmission line information. Just like the chart that we showed you a moment ago for day ahead, we need all of that information in real time as well. In real time, the market results generate real-time dispatches, ancillary services awards, along with instructions to start up or shut down resources. In the 5-minute time frame, the 5-minute prices are set and energy is dispatched. Now, before we begin talking about reliability, this is our first question break. I've given you a lot of information over the past hour to digest, and so I want to give you an opportunity now to ask any questions that you might have. So, Ethan, if we can queue up the verbal callers.
Of course. If you'd like to submit a question, please press pound 2 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. You'll hear a notification when your line is unmuted. At that time, please state your name and question. Once again, pressing pound 2 will place you into the question queue. If you'd like to submit a chat question, please look at the bottom right of the WebEx, enter your question in the message box provided, and select all panelists before sending your question. Once again, please ensure you've selected all panelists before sending your question. It does appear we have one verbal question. Caller, you are unmuted. Please go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to do my best to ask this question. We are looking at doing a front-of-the-meter project, and it looks like we're going to go fast-track arrangement, and we're going to connect the distribution lines to the utility. My question is, it appears that obviously we have to get interconnection first through the utility before we can kind of do anything with CAL-ISO. But can we get the ball rolling with CAL-ISO, for example, by submitting our interconnection request at the same time that we submit the interconnection request to the utility, or should we wait?
I have a link to something that will answer your question, I believe, and I'll find that and send that out to you as part of the follow-up email. Based on the type of project and where you are connecting, it sounded like you said you're connecting through the distribution system and not through the wholesale transmission system. And so in that case, it does feel like you need to work with the utility first, but I do have a like an FAQ that's been put out by the interconnection folks that kind of answer the question of who do I need to talk to when and first. So I will find the link to that. It's on our website somewhere. I'll just have to put my fingers on it, and I'll place that in the follow-up email that I send out to you. So that should point you in the right direction.
Great. Do you know my email address?
Well, when you logged into the call and provided your email, I'm going to get a list from AT&T of everyone who logged in, so the answer will go to everyone.
Okay.
But you can also send me a private message in the chat just to make sure that I know who you are and make sure I see your name on that list. But, yeah, as long as you logged in with your name and email to get into this webinar, then I have it.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll send a private message as well. Great. Thank you.
Sure thing. Yep. And then as a reminder about this presentation, when this is being recorded. After we receive the recording of the webinar, I will post that recording and a copy of the slides to the ISO website under our Learning Center. So a copy of this presentation along with a recording of the presentation will be available in about 3 to 5 business days. Ethan, do we have anybody else lined up in queue?
At this time, we have no further verbal questions. I do see a few in the chat. First question here. Oh, let me scroll up a little bit. Is the webinar going to be available as a recording session?
Yes, absolutely. So we're recording it, and we'll be posting it to the website in about 3 to 5 business days.
Okay.
We answered the one about the convergence bid, and it looks like there's one other one, which, Ethan, I'll go ahead and take. There was a question from Terry that wanted to go through an example of the real-time market process and how that would work. So we're picking a particular hour. They're saying hour ending 14. Hour ending 14, so that's 2 p.m., which hour ending 14 starts at 1, ends at 2. So the question was, can you take an example to go through the real-time market process and the economic dispatch? So if the hour ending 14 is the operating hour, is the 15-minute market running from 13:45 for operating hour ending 14? So each particular market interval, so if we're looking at hour ending 14, that's broken up into 4 15-minute segments. The first portion of that hour, which is from 0 to 15 minutes, is actually going to be optimized 37.5 minutes before that time. And because I don't have a clock in front of me, whatever the math is from there, so 37.5 minutes before the top of the hour, we're looking at that 15-minute time section and optimizing that 15-minute time section from 0 to 15. And then as we get closer to that particular interval, in the 15-minute market process, we are determining if we are starting up or shutting down any resources in that window. As we get to the 5-minute dispatch, we break up that particular slice of the hour into 3 5-minute intervals. And the way the timing works for each of the 5-minute intervals is that 7.5 minutes before the first interval, we optimize for that interval, so 0 to 5 minutes. And then at 2.5 minutes before 0, 0. So at the top of the hour is 0. 2.5 minutes before that, we issue a market dispatch for that first 5-minute slice of that hour. So from 0 to 5, you'll get a market award 2.5 minutes prior to that, telling you where you need to be for that market interval in the 5-minute market. Now I'm going to see the chat here to see if that is making sense to folks. Okay, so that looks like it answered your question, Terry. And I think that is it.
Just as a note, there are no further questions in the chat queue as well.
Okay, great. So that, and I think what I'll do is make myself a little note to add in a future session, a little breakdown like that. I think that would be helpful for folks. So I'll, Terry, thank you for your question. I'm going to go ahead and augment my slides so that the next time I do this presentation, it'll have a little breakdown like that with timing. And then you can see kind of how it rolls through on the clock as opposed to me trying to pull the numbers out of my head of what it would look like. I'll show you like at X time, this is what happens, and then this time, this is what happens. So you can look for that the next time we do this next quarter. And on to now reliability. So the ISO is responsible for the constant and reliable flow of electricity for the health, safety, and welfare of consumers. Maintaining reliability is a balancing act that requires a lot of expertise and controlling many moving parts. So what is reliability? In short, it is all about keeping the lights on, and our system operations is at the forefront of this task. Our operators are responsible for maintaining the reliability of the grid by balancing supply and demand using various resource types. Operators are located in 2 control centers, which are continuously connected in real time through instant video conferencing capability. Both control rooms are operated 24/7, and though Folsom is the primary control room, our Lincoln Operations Center shares duties, so the entire operation of the grid can be transferred between control rooms at any time. There are multiple redundancies on all systems, providing one of the highest levels of dependability in computer system operations. As I mentioned in the last slide, reliability of the electric grid is a primary focus. Now, electricity is a unique commodity in that it is produced, delivered, and consumed at nearly the speed of light. And throughout this process, the goal is to maintain grid frequency at 60 hertz in order to keep the system safe and keep the lights on. Electricity is produced by the supply, which consists of generation and imports, and electricity is delivered via transmission and distribution lines and then consumed by the demand, which are the load and exports. Maintaining this balance between these two is similar to driving on a highway and trying to keep your car at 60 miles an hour. So like a gas pedal on a car, in order to maintain 60 hertz, you either increase or decrease generation to meet changes in demand. Because of its instantaneous nature, the ISO uses technology that takes a pulse of the system every few seconds, and our highly skilled and trained system operators constantly monitor multiple bits of data to be able to instantly react to fluctuating conditions, such as weather changes and sudden supply shortfalls or surpluses. There are a number of ways to participate in the ISO market, and any interactions where the ISO will provide services requires entities to go through processes that consist of signing contracts and non-disclosure agreements, passing tests, and gaining access to applications as necessary. Depending on the resource capabilities, market participants can elect to bid into the energy and ancillary services market or sell other electricity products. Physical supply and demand are bids for those resources that have the ability to provide or consume the energy needed on the bulk electric system. Convergence bids or bids for virtual supply or virtual demand are financial positions taken in the day-ahead market and liquidated in the real-time market. Convergence bidding is designed to reduce the average price differences between day-ahead and real-time, as well as the volatility of the difference between day-ahead and real-time prices. Ancillary services are considered capacity products and help maintain the reliability of the grid by ensuring that we have additional resources held back in reserves so that we have the ability to handle different types of contingency events, whether short-term regulation or operational needs that must be covered within a 10-minute window. Residual unit commitment is a way to ensure that the ISO procures enough capacity to meet the day-ahead forecast by bridging the gap between the physical resources that clear the day-ahead market compared to the forecasted demand for that day. Flexible ramping products provide additional upward and downward flexible ramping capability to account for uncertainty due to demand and renewable forecasting errors in the real-time market. It ensures that some unloaded capacity is reserved to be dispatched as energy if needed. As we mentioned earlier in the presentation, the ISO is now providing reliability coordination services for the majority of the Western Interconnection. Congestion revenue rights are financial instruments made available through allocation and auction processes that enable rights holders to manage congestion cost variability based on locational marginal pricing. These rights are acquired primarily for offsetting congestion costs that occur in the day-ahead market. And then finally, we have something called an inter-SC trade, a trade between scheduling coordinators. And this is an optional accounting service that we offer to help facilitate financial transactions between entities. Though there are many ways to interact with the ISO, only a scheduling coordinator is authorized to transact business directly with the ISO. A scheduling coordinator is an entity authorized by the ISO to buy and sell power in the ISO markets. SCs bid and schedule their supply into the market or submit demand bids, and then based on the awards, energy flows across the transmission system and is distributed to the customer by local utilities. If an entity chooses not to become a scheduling coordinator, it would need to contract the services of a certified scheduling coordinator to participate on their behalf. SCs may include convergence bidders, demand response providers, utility-owned generation, independent generators, energy imbalance market participants, and power marketers. There is a process that entities must complete in order to be qualified as a scheduling coordinator, including mandatory training, financial and testing requirements, as well as ongoing adherence to policies. For more information on becoming an SC, you can visit the ISO website. We also have something that we'll discuss now called the Western EIM, or the Energy Imbalance Market, which is a real-time only market. The Energy Imbalance Market, or EIM, is an extension of the ISO's real-time market, and we offer this to any balancing authority in the western area of North America. It provides a low-cost, low-risk option that balances load and resources automatically and economically. Full market members, so if we're looking on the left side of this slide, when I say a full market member, that's what I'm talking about. Full market members seamlessly participate in both the day-ahead and the real-time markets, while the EIM, or Energy Imbalance Market participant entities, only participate in the real-time market. Participants are able to submit bids, which will be utilized by the ISO to optimize energy transfer and generation output between all EIM participants in both 15 and 5-minute increments. EIM's objective is to minimize the total cost of serving energy demand of the entire EIM area while simultaneously respecting the boundaries between balancing authority areas, the responsibilities of the entities that manage them, and the transmission rights that connect them. The ISO operates the only EIM in the West and uses advanced ISO market systems, which automatically choose low-cost resources to reliably meet customer demand. We have several participants in the energy imbalance market, with more planning to join in the coming years. This is a good opportunity to answer a question that I see in the chat. Someone wanted to know if the flexible ramping product that I mentioned before is only procured during the real-time market, and whether or not it was an ancillary product. We have something called the flexible ramping product, which is a real-time market function. So in day ahead, we have something called RUC, Residual Unit Commitment, that allows us to procure additional capacity to meet forecasts. In real time, we procure something called the flexible ramping product, and we do this from energy bids. So the flexible ramping product is considered to be an energy product, not an ancillary service product, which also means that it applies for our EIM participants as well. Energy imbalance market, by definition, means energy and not ancillary services. So energy bids are what is being submitted by EIM folks in real time, and therefore this flexible ramping product also applies to EIM participants as well. So whether you are a full market participant or an EIM participant, when you submit an energy bid in real time, that energy bid is analyzed and could possibly be awarded for something that we call flexible ramping, which basically allows us to hold back some unloaded capacity to kind of help us ease through the fluctuations and the ramping periods between intervals. We have additional extra information on the Learning Center of the ISO website about flexible ramping product. And so if you're interested in learning more about how that works, you can refer to our Learning Center, and there will be some recordings of computer-based training, or sorry, not recordings of computer-based training, but recordings of a verbal training that we gave about flexible ramping along with some slides. So you can find some more information on that there, but it applies in real time only, and it applies both to full participants and to EIM folks as well. A little bit more about EIM. I've got some charts that I'm going to show you here. On the left side, we're imagining, or we're referring to, a non-EIM environment. So in a non-EIM environment, you have each balancing authority area charged with maintaining loads and resources within their own boundary. Now, what this means is that there may be a limited pool of balancing resources, or there may be the need to carry high levels of reserves to ensure that you have enough. There may be economic inefficiencies because you need to rely only on your internal resources, and there may be increased costs to integrate renewable resources into these areas. Whereas in an EIM, we have the ability to diversify our balancing resources and carry less flexible reserves because we're able to share that across a larger footprint. It's more economically efficient because we can share excess supply among BAs and not necessarily have to always use internal generation that may be more expensive depending on the time or situation, and decreased integration costs when you have the ability to offer your supply of renewable resources across a larger geographical footprint. So EIM entities see benefits from better, more cost-effective dispatch of both their internal resources inside of their own boundaries and also the transfer of energy, the economic transfers that are occurring between areas. So the area that is sending power sells their supply in excess, and the area that receives power does not have to dispatch more expensive internal resources. So over time, each time we add an EIM entity, the benefits are realized not just for that entity, but there are also compounded effects for other EIM entities. So if you watch and you monitor the benefit reports that are posted on westerneim.com, you'll see from the trend that the benefits for joining EIM grow in sort of a non-linear fashion. I have a couple of questions in the chat that I want to address before we move on to the next slide. One of the questions asked about flexible ramping product and wanted to clarify whether they'll be paid in real-time energy prices. So flexible ramping has real-time prices associated with it. And there are different elements of how they're paid in flexible ramping, and further explanation of that is on the ISO website. But yes, real-time prices are used to pay for flexible ramping. And there was another question that asked about the full network model and wanted to know if that includes the EIM states as well. So yes, as part of joining EIM, one of the steps that's required is to add that BA footprint into the market model. So we get information on the both the transmission system and the generating resources for those EIM entities, and that gets placed into the full network model so that we can model that in our market. Additionally, for those entities that we are providing RC services for, or reliability coordinator services for, we also have all of the RC customer information in the model as well. So moving on from our EIM questions, one last note that I have here on the slide, folks that join EIM are still responsible for running their own BAAs. So the energy imbalance market is real-time only at the moment, and right now only for energy. So there are still many other tasks involved in managing a balancing area. And all of that day-ahead work still is taking place, and all of the real-time work, frankly, is still taking place. It's just a different way of managing the dispatch of those resources. So with the ISO market, every 15 minutes and every 5 minutes, our market is analyzing your internal resources and the demand on the system as it is now, and determining what needs to be adjusted and which is the most economic way to provide that adjustment. So not just for that BA internally, but then any excess supply that you're wanting to provide to your neighbors, that is factored in as well. So we're looking at a better, more cost-effective dispatch of your own internal resources and also managing the economic transfer that happens between those areas. Now we're going to talk about post-market. So we talked at length about day ahead and real time. Next time I can probably beef up the real time section a little bit more, so I'll work on that between now and then. But now we're going to move on to talking about post-market, what happens after the market runs. Basically, this section talks about all of the settlements processes. So the image on this slide kind of provides a high-level depiction of the activity that occurs in the day-ahead and the real-time markets. It begins with market participants taking various positions by submitting bids and schedules. The market then processes that information. The various market processes run and provide an optimized solution that is least cost while meeting local reliability needs. And then these transactions are then tallied on settlement statements by trade date, and finally compiled and sent out via invoice or payment advice on a weekly schedule. So our day-ahead and real-time markets are settled out financially in our post-market processes. One principle to keep in mind is that ISO market results are kind of stacked like pancakes. So what happens in the day-ahead stays in the day-ahead, and real-time changes to schedules and their associated prices will be stacked separately for accounting purposes for both the 15-minute market and the 5-minute market. So the way this works here, this diagram kind of signifies an energy settlement for an hour. So from the day-ahead market perspective, we're going to talk about that first. This resource was awarded 120 megawatts in the day ahead. So they will receive a payment at that day-ahead price for that 120 megawatts that they generate in real time. Now, we're walking through this example with the assumption that they're following all of these awards just to make it an easy discussion. So in day-ahead, I get an award for 120 megawatts. I'm paid for those 120 megawatts at the day-ahead price. I'm then incremented up. I'm asked to produce an additional 24 megawatts in the 15-minute market horizon. So I'm going to get paid for those 24 megawatts at the 15-minute market price. And then in real time, I'm asked to provide an additional 12 megawatts. And so I will get paid for that real-time dispatch instruction at the real-time 5-minute price. So this resource across this hour, if we're going to just pretend everything is perfect and steady and unchanging and none of the prices changed or anything, this resource generated fully for an hour 156 megawatts. And we in settlements are going to slice that up into 3 different prices and 3 different megawatt quantities. So they get paid 120 megawatts at the day-ahead price. They're going to be paid for 24 megawatts at the 15-minute market price and an additional 12 megawatts at the 5-minute price. Now, in reality, like you can see on my chart here, the megawatt quantity stayed the same. I'm telling you that all of the prices for each one of those was the same, just to make a very simple conversational example. But in reality, you will see that it could possibly fluctuate from interval to interval. So not only is there the possibility for the amount of megawatts that you are producing to fluctuate from 5-minute to 5-minute interval, but also the price has the ability to change. So we will, in the settlements process, we will slice up this entire hour into 5-minute increments so that we can get down to that 5-minute price when needed. So it's pretty complex and broken down into a bunch of different categories, which we call charge codes. So each transaction is listed separately on the statement in a particular charge code that allows us to break down each piece of this market activity and price it accordingly. So how do we get down to that 5-minute granularity? We base this on meter data. Meter data is used for billable quantities to represent the energy that we generate or that is consumed during a settlement interval. And when I say we generate, I mean the industry, not we, the ISO, because we don't have any resources, but the energy that is generated by the resources that are participating in the market and then consumed by the demand. We collect meter data in one of 2 ways. The meter can be directly polled by the ISO, or meter data can be sent in by the scheduling coordinator for the purpose of reporting the actual performance of the resource. So we have revenue quality meter data that is required by the ISO for entities internal to the BA, and then we convert that through what we call VEE, or validation, estimation, and editing. We convert that into settlement quality meter data through that process. And then we use that on our settlement statements, which again I said break down each of the pieces of market activity into little 5-minute pieces. From a market participant perspective, settlement quality meter data is acceptable for entities external to the ISO BA, so you can submit your meter data to us in settlement quality meter data, which means it's already gone through this validation, estimation, and editing process on your end. And an annual self-certification process is in place to ensure that metering is accurate. So the settlements process that we use, the purpose of this is to pay the folks who provided energy and charge the folks who consumed it at a very basic high level. But the way we get there is through a complex process. So settlements are the calculation, billing, and invoicing of charges and payments for market and transmission-related activities between market participants and the ISO. The settlement cycle follows a specific timeline and processes for publication of statements, invoices, and payment advices, as well as the opportunity to submit a dispute submittal. And also, there are deadlines and requirements for you to provide payments. So day-ahead results and real-time results, along with the meter data, flow through the settlements process and output a settlement statement for each trade date. There are formulas that are associated with each charge code, which is the category of that market activity, to determine how those transactions will be settled. And those individual calculations are broken down on the daily settlement statements, and then we collate those into weekly invoices, which identify charges to be remitted, and payment advices that show what will be paid out. Each entity will receive a series of settlement statements by trade date. Initial settlement statements are only an estimate of the final results, and marginal adjustments may need to be made several months after the trade date. So I've got some information here on this chart, and I've got some things that refer to this legend over here. So T is for trade date, B equals business days, and M stands for months. So what we're saying here on this chart, we have invoices or payment advices for market transactions. We publish those weekly on Wednesdays. So yesterday, those would have been sent out and include market transactions for the trading day Monday through Sunday of the previous week. The invoices are due for payment by 10 a.m. on the following Tuesday, and payment advices are then dispersed as applicable at 2 p.m. that same Tuesday afternoon. As the ISO is a not-for-profit organization, all the money that comes into the market gets dispersed back out into the market, with the exception of our grid management charges, or GMC, that is used to cover our specified operating costs. So this diagram here depicts the daily settlement timeline, which shows how many times one trade date will be processed for adjustments and accurate calculations. Now, this slide shows the timeline as it is today. I do want to point out that we have a current market settlement timeline initiative that will be making changes to these dates. So to stay up to date with this initiative, please visit our stakeholder processes page to learn more about the change coming in the future. And I will have a link to that in this presentation that will get posted in a couple of days, and you'll be able to take a look at that. But as it is right now, as we're speaking, T+3, or the trade date plus 3 business days, is the first estimated statement that is produced by the reporting system. The next time this data will be processed for updates or changes will be at the T+12B milestone, which will include any meter data submitted by T+8B. There are also subsequent statements that are published periodically. There may or may not be adjustments in future settlement statements, but entities will only be responsible for the amount that changes from the previous settlement statement. So there are a series of optional statements that may take place. We do have a settlements computer-based training that provides more information on what happens on each one of those dates. That is available in our Learning Center on the website as well. And these rules that we're looking at, or rules and timelines that we're looking at on this slide right now, will be effective through the end of the year. Starting January of 2021, we're going to move to a new timeline. Again, information about that new timeline is in the Market Settlement Timeline Initiative, but essentially what we're doing is we're moving the publication of the first statement until after the first submission of meter data, so that your first statement is not based on estimated data, but you have the opportunity to have submitted actual meter data so that the fluctuations or changes between one settlement statement to another is lessened by starting off with meter data being used for that first statement. Now, a key point is that data must be submitted on time in order to allow the settlement process to proceed more quickly. So late meter data impacts settlement statements for the entire market, and we have something called a rules of conduct in place to outline specific requirements and expectations of market participants. I mentioned our GMC, or the Grid Management Charge. That is how we recover all of our annual administrative, operating, and capital costs from the entities that utilize our services. We implement the GMC with a stakeholder process and get that approved by FERC in order to provide a simplified and transparent rate design that increases clarity and predictability and provides simple information to the scheduling coordinators to explain the charges that will apply to various activities. In June of every year, we review the current financial conditions with stakeholders and gather their input for the budget process for the next calendar year. And so that stakeholder process and process for updating the GMC takes place on an annual basis. The draft budget gets reviewed in the October timeframe and gets finalized at the Board of Governors meeting at the end of the year. So I've given you a lot of information to digest. And before we're heading towards the end of the presentation, where I'm going to kind of show you a couple of places on the ISO website that you can go for more information. But let's go ahead and pause here for a question break. And Ethan, if you wouldn't mind checking to see if there's anybody in the question queue who wants to ask a verbal question.
Of course, it looks like we do have one question in the queue. Caller, you are unmuted. Please go ahead. Caller, can you please ensure that your personal device is unmuted as well? All right, would we like to move on to the next question, which is in the chat?
Yes, let's go for it with that.
All right. Let's see. So from Hannah, we have, what is a virtual bid and how does convergence bidding reduce market validity between day-ahead and real-time markets?
Thank you for your question, Hannah. So I'll go into, time check, briefly virtual bidding. Virtual bidding is the ability for a market participant who is a convergence bidding scheduling coordinator to submit financial bids into the market. There is not a physical resource behind the financial, behind the bid. It is purely taking a financial position in day ahead and having that financial position liquidate in real time at the real-time price. The goal of having virtual bidding as part of the ISO market, it's something that's available in all ISO markets that have a day-ahead in the real-time market as part of FERC's market design. And the goal of virtual or convergence bidding, which is how we refer to it at the ISO, is to minimize the volatility in the price difference between the day-ahead market prices and the real-time prices. So the goal is to encourage or incentivize folks to participate in the day-ahead, both physical bidders and virtual bidders, to submit their bids into the market, and virtual bidders have an opportunity to set prices just as a physical bid can. All of the virtual bids are stacked up along the bid curves, whether they be virtual supply or virtual demand. They're stacked along the same supply or demand curves along with the actual physical bids for supply and demand. So the goal is to incentivize physical participants to actively participate in the day-ahead market and bid competitively to ensure that their resources are picked up. The goal is to have more bids in the market. More bids introduces more liquidity into the market. And the design is intended to have, because a virtual bid is placed in day ahead at a particular load, or not load, but a particular node or price location, and then liquidated in real time at the real time price of that, the convergence bidders will try to essentially, with their bidding activity, it puts upward or downward pressure on the prices as part of that market activity. So that's kind of how we allow it, how it works, and what it does for the market by bringing in just more liquidity. Hopefully that answers your question. We do have, if you want a little bit deeper dive into that, we do have on our Learning Center some information about the day-ahead market enhancements that includes an example of how virtual bidding works. So there's a presentation that you can drill into on the Learning Center that will give you a visual representation of what I kind of described to you from memory. So please take a look at that if you'd like to dive down further. And then do we have our caller on the phone? Do we want to try to get that person back before we go to remaining questions in the chat?
Sure, caller. If your hand was raised before, please once again press pound 2 to enter the question queue. Does not appear that they're rejoining the queue.
Okay, so let's move on to to the chat questions then.
Alrighty, the next question is from Terry. Just curious, if there are 2 different pricing intervals in real time, FMM and 5 minutes, how would the load be charged in real time if the load is fully exposed to the real-time market?
Thank you for your question, Terry. So the way that a physical resource is paid a particular price at its load, at its generating location or where it's connected on the grid. It has a price point. Load pays for its consumption a little bit differently. Through what we call a DLAP, or a default load aggregation point, which is a collection of all of the load nodes. So demand is charged the weighted average price of all of the load nodes across a particular area. So I think that answers your question. Hopefully it answers your question. Give me something more in the chat if you want to go deeper on that. So I'm just going to read this again to make sure I'm touching on it properly. How would the load be charged in real time if the load is fully exposed to the real-time market? So the load ends up being charged for its consumption based on its meter reading. And I think what I'm trying to figure out is the best way to answer that. And I think that I've answered your question, and you said it seems like that's the right answer. So sorry if it came across a little fuzzy, but it's charged a little bit differently than resources are paid at their individual loads. So it gets a weighted average across all of their load nodes, and that is how load ends up being charged for their consumption. Okay, next question. If you want to go ahead and I'm having Ethan read them to me so that folks who end up listening into the recording later can hear a question asked and then answered. So we can move on to the next one. Thank you, Ethan.
Of course. Her following question was, another question is, what's the reason why the resourcers in EIM are not allowed to provide AS product?
As part of the energy imbalance market, it was decided that that would be energy only and not ancillary services, so not those contingency reserves products. It is the way that it was designed, I would say, in the beginning. Now, there are discussions. We have a couple of market initiatives that we're working on. One is called Day-Ahead Market Enhancements, and then one is extending the day-ahead market. So day-ahead market enhancements is how we would enhance or change the day-ahead market, and that's DAME because we like our acronyms. And then we have something called EDAM, which is extending the day-ahead market, and that basically is the possibility of extending and providing more opportunity to the EIM folks and allowing them to participate in day ahead as well. So when we initially set up the energy imbalance market, it was energy only and not ancillary services. I don't know why we kept out ancillary services and made it EIM only. I would have to just read back in the very beginning of all of the papers that are probably still posted on the website for the discussion on the why that was done that way. It's been so long, I'm just not sure. But I know that you could probably dive into one of our completed initiatives there's probably an explanation somewhere as to why that occurred. I'll see if I can find that myself as well. But contingency reserves technically they are an energy product, but the way we categorize them in our market, we call it ancillary services. So really an EIM participant uses a reserve sharing group or something else in their area to provide that piece of the balancing area function and just goes to the ISO EIM market for those energy imbalances, that actual real-time dispatch of energy. And that was just a determination that was made. And I think that is everything. Oh, there's a question to me, it looks like privately. Is there a department or contact I can reach out to specifically with help for front-of-meter energy storage products or help or questions with front-of-meter energy storage products? There is, I would say, Mike, that you should go to, and I think I have maybe coming up in the slides showing you where that works on the ISO website, but there's a contact us on CAISO.com. If you're just initially starting and you're not actually participating in the market yet, but you have questions, there's a contact us part of the website that you can click on, and then you can submit a question, write it out and submit a question that way, or there's also a phone number that you can call for our customer service line, and you can initiate your question or initiate a discussion that way by asking your question and then having them route you to the right person. So I would say either reach out verbally by calling the customer service line or using that contact us feature and submitting your question through that online form to get that routed to the right person. Did we get anybody back in the question queue, Ethan, or did we lose our caller?
It does not appear that we have anybody in the verbal question queue at this time.
Okay, so I'm going to move on from here. I think it would be a good idea for me to get a little bit of clarification for Terry's question about load. So I'll do a little bit of follow-up on that, and I give you a better answer via email, Terry, when I send out a follow-up to that, so that instead of just ruminating off of the top of my head, I'll try to get a better example for you, and I'll share that with folks about how load ends up being charged. So I'll get that out in the email to everybody. That will probably take place either later today or sometime tomorrow, depending on when I can gather up all of the information that I have. So from here, we're going to take a look at how you can monitor and participate in the ISO. This is a screenshot from our website. There's a number of tabs along the top of the home page, and so I wanted to highlight a few of them briefly for you. I have a couple 3 minutes here before the end of the session and a couple slides to go through, so I'll do my best to get it done for you. Folks who are interested in EIM can access westerneim.com and look at more information on the current state of the EIM, how it will continue to evolve. This site provides a great deal of resource material, including computer-based training specifically to participating in EIM, and you'll also find the list of active and pending EIM participants available on that page. When we're talking about reliability, I talked about RC West. Reliability is an essential element of operating the electric grid. And as I mentioned earlier, the ISO is an RC, and is offering these services to other balancing authorities in the western United States. We have a page on our website for more information about the services that we provide through this RC West function. When I post this presentation in a couple of business days, you'll have an opportunity to click on these links. This is just some follow-up information that these are YouTube videos of our system operators that are posted that just go into some details of kind of about the day in the life of our control room, talking about grid operations and market operations. Sometimes it's nice to hear from folks on the floor who are actually doing the job, so you can click on these links and take a look at that. It's kind of hard to play a video inside of a webinar and make it work for everyone, so I just provide these links here and share that information with you. We have a lot of data that we share about our markets through something called OASIS, or Open Access Same-Time Information System. So here on OASIS, you'll find real-time data related to the ISO transmission system and its markets. This data is public information and allows for the data to be pulled and used by anyone or any interested entity. We also have something called Today's Outlook, which is our most visited public web page. There's over 200,000 visitors a year, and these folks are able to quickly see changing patterns of supply and demand, what our forecasted and actual peaks are, energy supplies by resource type, real-time energy prices and renewable energy production, and the updated net load graph depicts daily system ramps that reflect changes every 5 minutes. And you can click on the Today's Outlook link on the ISO website. It's right there on the very front page to find up-to-date information. We also have this information available through an app. It's called the ISO Today app that's available through either Google Play or the Apple Store, depending on your phone type. So you don't necessarily have to go to the ISO website to get this data. You can download our app and have that data at your fingertips, and you can see how that information changes every 5 minutes. We also have business practice manuals, or BPMs. The rules in the tariff can be high level at times. So in the BPMs and associated configuration guides, we provide additional information about how these rules are applied. BPMs provide detailed rules, procedures, and examples for how we administer and operate and plan our business processes, how our accounting requirements are, and how the tariff works. And adherence to these manuals is important for orderly operation of the ISO market. We also have a stakeholder process that we use to manage any changes to these business practice manuals in a publicly transparent manner where you, the stakeholder, are able to participate and see how those proposed changes are occurring and able to voice your opinions in that as well. So you can find monthly meeting dates that are posted on the ISO website that talk about that. You can sign up for something that we call the daily briefing to get a once daily summary email of what is happening at the ISO. There's a lot happening in the industry in general and at the ISO specifically. To stay up to date, you could sign up for this briefing, which gives a summary each day of all of our email announcements, and also provides a summary of news and activities, including announcements of upcoming calendar events, regulatory filings, and any new or enhanced features that we've added to the website. We also have a news web page where you can find up-to-date information. This allows folks from public affairs and media relations to access our information, and providing this information in a transparent fashion is at the heart of the ISO's mission to inform, educate, and promote the clean, reliable electric system and efficient market of the future. So if you are a media individual, you can see the media hotline number here, an email address that you can use to reach out to our media relations team. I have just a few more slides here that I'll go through, and one of them is to explain that we also have a dedicated developer site to enhance our customer service. So we have a developer page we've created to simplify doing business with the ISO. This is a comprehensive website for IT developers that coordinates and consolidates the technical documentation that developers need for the ISO's APIs or application programming interfaces, that allows developers to find connectivity instructions, interface and definition files, and sample code, FAQs, and getting started guides, so you can access the developer page on our website. You do have to sign up for that and provide an email address, but then you are able to create an account and access the developer page. And we also have, I've talked about the Learning Center a couple of times. We are committed to providing our customers with a broad menu of high-quality training courses on the ISO market functionality, as well as individual market applications. These courses are organized into areas of focus or tracks that are designed to be an industry resource for market participants and the general public to learn about electric grids and markets and the ISO's role in the electricity industry. We are continuing to evolve our training programs and enhance our training material to better meet the various levels of experience, technical levels and needs of our customers, and to make it a more user-friendly experience. And we are creating more computer-based training and learning bursts to break down some of these complicated subjects into bite-sized, manageable pieces. So please keep an eye on this page to find updated content and learning opportunities. This is the page that will provide you with more information on those various initiatives that I was talking about. And then finally, closing out this slide deck, you'll see links that I referred to all throughout the presentation and the slides that correlate with those references. So this page and the next page are a list of all of the different links that you can access to get more information on different things that I had talked about. In addition to that, we also have links to the transmission planning process and generator interconnection process pages that you can take a look at for more information there. In addition, there are links to the material that we presented at our Resource Interconnection Fair, which is an educational forum intended to help participants understand the processes involved in connecting resources to the grid. The most recent Resource Interconnection Fair took place in March of 2020, so the information that is posted is very up to date if you want to take a look at that presentation. And then finally, I just wanted to close with thanking you for hanging in there with us. We did have a little technical hiccup where we lost audio for a couple of minutes, and so that kind of caused us to run a little bit late here. So I wanted to tell you in a couple of days we will post the presentation to our Learning Center under the Market and Operations Path link. This presentation and those embedded links will act as your toolkit to help you find more information on each topic. There was also a question in the chat asking for more information about convergence bidding and how the ISO suspended convergence bidding for a couple of days back in August and wanted more information on that. In the follow-up email that I send out to you today, I will include a link to frequently asked questions that has answered that question already on the website, so I'll provide that for you so that you can take a look at the answer from the market folks as to why we suspended convergence bidding. I'll include a link to that in my follow-up email to you all. I should get a list from Ethan probably around the end of the day or so of all of your email addresses. So when I get that list, I'll email that out to you. If you have any questions on anything that we have presented here today or want more information on where to find this or that on the website, you can email those to customerreadiness@kaiso.com. And before I close with my last comments, I wanted to give an opportunity for anybody to ask a final verbal question before we disconnect, since we are still all on the line together. Do I have anybody? Ethan, do we want to do one last check of the verbal queue?
Of course, at this time, I do not see any questions in the verbal queue, but once again, you can join the said queue by pressing #2. It does look like we have one that just jumped in. Caller, you are unmuted. Please go ahead.
It's just a comment. Thank you for providing all that detailed information. The last couple of slides will be included in the final presentation.
Yes, absolutely. So you'll be able to click on all of those links that we just talked about, yes.
And final question.
And that will be posted. That'll be posted in, 3 to 5 business days. You'll be able to see that on the ISO website, on the Learning Center. And your final question?
The final question for generation to be part of your market, is any obligation or any market in order to generation stays within your CAISO's market, not on the energy or bilateral to another BA?
Let me see if I understand your question. Are you asking if you are a generator participating in the ISO market, does that prevent you from selling your energy in another way as well? Is that what you're asking?
Well, that's one way. That's one part of the question.
Okay. No, it does not, but the offers that you provide, the bids that you submit into the ISO market, we expect that if you are awarded those bids that you will provide that energy.
Well, how would,
have a follow-up to that?
So how would CAISO secure the installed capacity for the next day load? For instance, if not enough generation bid into your system and then you have load that is coming, how would you secure the generation?
So when we move, we treat that differently between day ahead and real time. So in day ahead, we clear bid in demand against bid in supply.
Sure.
That is one part of the day ahead market. And then at the end of that, we have another process that looks at the forecast for the following day, and we procure any additional supply that we need to cover that forecast. So first we clear what has bid. First we clear supply against demand in one of the processes, the integrated forward market. Then our residual unit commitment process, we procure 100% of that forecast based on the bids that were submitted into what we call RUC, so the RUC bids. So coming from day ahead to real time, we've procured 100% of what's needed plus excess reserves for the following day. And then in real time, as demand changes, we make sure that we procure enough supply to meet that demand. So that is how we do that.
So I guess there's no ICAP market, installed capacity market. That would be an easier way to ask the question.
Oh, okay. No, we don't have a capacity market as part of the ISO in the way that you've defined it, no.
Yep. That was the easiest way to ask, but I just went around it. But all right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep, sure thing. And then there was one last question in the chat here, wanting to learn more about demand response participation. We do have a number of presentations with regard, and we call it ESDR, Energy Storage and Distributed Energy Resources. So there's some demand response information in there on our Learning Center. And I think what I can do for you, Helen, is provide a link to that when I send out the email so that you don't have to dig around for that. So there is demand response information on the website and how to participate in the various market mechanisms, and I'll point you to one of the latest presentations on that in my follow-up email. And for timing purposes, since we are running a little over, I think we'll go ahead and close today's session. I appreciate all of you hanging in with me who did. Again, if you have questions on anything we presented here today or where to find more information, please email them to customerreadiness@CAISO.com. For those who signed in for today's webinar, you will be receiving an email from our department that will include a link to a survey. We highly encourage that you take a few minutes to complete the survey to let us know how we can better serve your training needs. In that email, I will also include the various things that we talked about throughout this session. And this concludes our welcome session today. Thank you for your participation. We hope that you found it useful and informative, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using AT&T Event Conferencing Enhanced. You may now disconnect.